Hey everyone, this is Jeremy, and we are going to take a look at the Moon Knight fighter from the Unmatched system of games. Now, Moon Knight is a Marvel character who is from the Redemption Row set. This set has Luke Cage, Ghost Rider, and Moon Knight. We will see here this amazing Moon Knight figure here. Moon Knight, I think, is now my favorite of all the Unmatched fighters here as far as his figure. This is just an amazing mini here. So Moon Knight is an interesting one, that he is an avatar for the Egyptian god Khonshu, and he has multiple different personalities that poke around in there in him. So we'll take a look at the character card here. We have 3 character cards. Well, that multiple personalities I was talking about, this is how they work here in Unmatched. Moon Knight is a melee fighter with a health of 16 and a move of 3. Special ability: at the start of your turn, move up to 2 spaces. At the end of your turn, change to your next identity, which is Khonshu. So he goes to Khonshu. Khonshu adds +2 to the value of all of his attack cards. He does not take damage from effects other than combat damage. At the end of your turn, change to your next identity, Mr. Knight. Mr. Knight adds +1 to all his defense values. At the end of your turn, change to your next identity, Moon Knight. And so it's just this cycle that you will, at the end of your turn, you will change from one of your identities and then to your next one. So just to clarify a few things with these abilities, Moon Knight's ability for moving 2 spaces at the start of his turn, that is not an action. That's just 2 spaces that he gets to move before his first turn. So Moon Knight can close in on you pretty quickly there, take 2 spaces automatically, and then maneuver 3 if he needs to. So he can really clear some ground pretty quick. Khonshu, he adds the 2 to the value of his attack, so that's like Big Alice or Angry Achilles. The second part, he does not take damage from effects other than combat damage. So that means if someone plays a card that's like deal 2 damage to the opposing fighter and you're currently Khonshu, Khonshu doesn't take that because he doesn't take damage from things that aren't combat damage. He won't take damage from effects on his own cards, which is another interesting thing to think about. And exhaustion that you get into when you don't have any cards left in your deck. Well, exhaustion is not combat damage, so he does not take damage from exhaustion when he is Khonshu. He gets to just maneuver around freely and not take the damage. So that is quite strong. So a few things I forgot to mention about Khonshu's ability. First of all, any effects that bring up the attack value of a card will still affect Khonshu, such as a momentous shift will still go up to a 5 because that is still going to be combat damage. Things like Beast Form and Forever Hide can still ramp up really high because they are still combat damage that is being dealt there. So he's not immune to that. Secondly, other card effects can still go off, they just won't damage him. For example, Buffy's Slayer Strength can still move Khonshu to a different space in the zone, but it just won't damage him. Sherlock's Master of Disguise can still switch spaces with him, it just won't deal the damage. And lastly, character abilities that are dealing damage will not deal damage to him. So Medusa and Dracula's Pings will not deal the damage to him. Ghost Rider's Hellfire Maneuver will not deal damage to him. Ghost Rider could still maneuver through Khonshu, but he won't deal the damage when he does it. And Mr. Knight adds +1 to all his defense values. That one is pretty straightforward. That's your Small Alice or Invisible Man on a fog ability. And we see here the mask or face from each of the different identities there, and a quote from each of them. So that is all really nice. And we see here the artwork is really great here. It's kind of got this black and white theme with just like a touch of blue in it. It's mainly black background with white stuff in the foreground, and it's really a very striking look to all of that there. We'll see in this deck that all of Moon Knight's cards are any's, so his cards can be played by any of the 3 identities there. It's not one specific one that can play it. So we'll go ahead and start taking a look at Moon Knight here. I have 3 copies of this card. I'm not real. An attack of 4. After combat, you may change to your next ability. So this card lets you switch to your next ability even if you're not at the end of your turn. Now there are a lot of ways that this can be useful here. You could think about that you would, first of all, this is you may change, so you don't necessarily have to. If you're Moon Knight and you attack someone, you can change to Khonshu, and that could be either to just switch at the end of your turn then to Mr. Knight to go straight from Moon Knight to Mr. Knight to get that defensive bonus. You could be moving with the 2 spaces at the start of your turn as Moon Knight, attacking, changing to Khonshu, and then hitting big as Khonshu, then to go to Mr. Knight. You could do this as Khonshu to go to Mr. Knight and then jump straight back to Moon Knight so that you can get back to Khonshu more quickly, or you could do it as Mr. Knight to essentially skip over Moon Knight and then get to Khonshu next on your turn there. So there's a lot of different ways that that could potentially be used, and it's a good useful card because of that. That's why I always win. 3 copies of this. You may boost this attack. So once again, this is a 3 that can be boosted. Basically the better version of, this is like the better version of Second Shot. Of course, doing this as Khonshu, that's a 5 that you're boosting, so that can be nasty. We get into our defense cards here. We're all in this together because there's 3 of them. We can kind of see a little bit of Khonshu and Moon Knight and the Mr. Knight suit all in there. A defense of 3. If you want to combat, draw a card. That's a way to help you like keep up your hand advantage a little bit there. We go into our versatiles now, which is really going to be most of this deck. Good enough for us. Just I could keep going over how great all of this card art is on here. It's just really great. This is a versatile 4. You may draw 2 cards. If you do, take 2 damage. Okay, so if you need 2 cards really bad and it's worth 2 damage to do it, you could do that. Although, if you Khonshu, you don't take damage from effects other than combat damage. So if you're Khonshu when you play this, you don't take the 2 damage and you can just draw the cards for free. I see what you're doing there, guys. The Fist of Khonshu. No, this deck does not have a momentous shift, but we still get a fist. It's a versatile 3. If you want to combat, move the opposing fighter up to 4 spaces. It's like you're just punching them and making them move 4 spaces. That's the part I like. A versatile 3. If you want to combat, you may look at the top 3 cards of your opponent's deck and discard one of them. Place the other 2 back in any order. Okay, I'm going to tell you right now, I haven't played against Moon Knight a whole lot at this point, but I already hate this card. This is a nasty, nasty effect because you're looking at your opponent's deck. You get to look at 3 cards and choose one to pull out of there. And that's a card that they never even get a chance to draw. So that's essentially making their deck, 1 card smaller. So that's a card that they never even get to draw, so it's pushing them 1 step closer to exhaustion. And yeah, you know what some of the other cards are on their deck, and of course obviously don't get to use that card. This is the only card in Unmatched right now that lets you pull something out of your opponent's deck and discard it. We have not seen that as an effect yet. So that is rough. That is really, really rough. Past and present intermingle, 3 copies of this. Versatile of 2. This is some of my favorite card art on here because this is just great. During combat, add the boost value of the top card of your discard pile to this card's value, because it's past and present intermingle, like the past being the top card on your discard pile. See what you're doing there, guys. Hopefully, in your opening hand, this is not the only defense card you have, and you get attacked first and have to play this when there's nothing in your discard pile, because that would be sad. You really want to have something besides that too there. And you do get to control this mostly. Defensively, you're always going to know what card's going to be on the top of your discard pile. If you use this as an attack, and your opponent has some during combat effect that would make you discard a card, then that card would be going on top of your discard pile before this, and that would change what that value is and could change what this card is for better or for worse. So it is something to think about when using this offensively. You have 3 feints, like that it's Mr. Knight going into Moon Knight there for the feint. You know what feint is. You've seen feint. You're used to those. He does have the full 3 of them. He isn't one of the ones to get 2. Totally sane thing to do. 3 copies of this. Versatile 2. After combat, you may deal 2 damage to both fighters in the combat. Well, dealing damage to both fighters in the combat. Well, dealing 2 damage to both fighters in the combat could be good in some places if you have a health advantage. Now, there's a possibility that that could take both of you out at the same time if you're both 2 or less damaged there. And the ruling that we've been given on that is that, the active player or whoever's turn it is wins if it is simultaneous combat. So you would need to be attacking if you're going to kill both of you with this. Although, once again, going here to Khonshu, he does not take damage from effects other than combat damage. So this would deal the 2 damage to the other fighter, but would not deal the 2 damage to Khonshu. More interesting things there. Get to Let Your Insanity Guide You. 2 copies. Versatile of 1. After combat, discard the top card of your deck. Draw cards equal to deck cards boost value. Well, that is definitely insanity guiding you there, because you have no idea what is going to be coming out there. If that is a boost of 2, so that may be something to think about to use for boost fodder. It does have a large chunk of versatiles here, so something to think about there. It's got a lot of versatiles, so you shouldn't be running out of defenses easily unless you just go attack crazy. All right. Madness will keep you alive. Recover 2 health. If you started your turn in a different space, gain 1 action. So you get to recover some health. And if you can get into a different space, either by your ability there, or by maneuvering, or by moving by some sort of card effect from your first action, you can end up gaining an action out of it, as well as that 2 health. So it is a different effect, though we haven't seen that sort of thing on a scheme yet. Those have always been mainly for like momentous shift like things. So it's a new thing for a scheme. And Travelers of the Night. Again, some great artwork there. That's just classic Moon Knight. Move your fighter up to 4 spaces. They may move through opposing fighters. Gain 1 action. So it's a good way to move them through there. You also see the only pass you would have would be this if you did not use it to gain an action. Otherwise you don't have any passes if you don't play that one that way. All right, so what is going on with all this craziness with Moon Knight? Well, Moon Knight is going to be a bit like Alice in that you are going to have to juggle your identity through there. And you are constantly changing there. You don't have a choice on it. You do have a way to purposely skip to the next one, but you can't. You have no means to stay as one of these for more than 1 turn. It is always a cycle going from Moon Knight to Khonshu to Mr. Knight. It is always in that order that they go. And you have to deal with them in that order, and you have to think about what identity you are going to be at any particular time. So it makes it really makes him a much more difficult character to figure out. Now he can have a very strong upside to him there. Oh, we got more hieroglyphs here on the bottom of this. And speaking of that, we've got, it's going to be hard to pick these up on the camera here, but you can kind of see lightly in the dark gray like a moon there and some hieroglyphs under that there, but you don't really show up on camera, but it's a very subtle thing. It's nice, but it just means it's going to be hard for you to or it's going to be more difficult for you to manage him, so he'll be a little bit trickier fighter to manage because of that. But I think that he's got a very high ceiling, particularly the Khonshu ability on top of the +2, but the not taking effects from anything except combat damage is just really strong, and that is just quite an ability there and quite an effect. But if you can find out ways to manage that, you can make this really quite a good fighter. So if you like this video, give it a thumbs up and a like. If you have any comments to make, you can leave them down at the comment section and let me know. And you can also check out my channel and subscribe so you can see all the videos I post so you don't miss anything. We'll see you around later.